Live from Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, this is Lunchtime Politics, where we unpack the biggest stories in the political landscape happening this hour. Here's what is on our radar. Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara relieves all commissioners and other public office holders in Rivers State. Plus on the program, former presidential candidate Mr. Peter Obi says the government of the APC has impoverished the nation and cannot fix Nigeria's problems. Lunchtime Politics starts right now. Wherever you're watching from around the world, we are live from our global headquarters here in Lagos, Nigeria. I am Kelly Egiga. Well, this hour we get to talk security as we pay attention to Mr. President's speech for October 1. Yesterday, it has grabbed a lot of attention and headlines yesterday with people and analysts doing a lot of analysis and commentaries. We'll get to talk about all of that in just a moment. But first, let's take you to Rivers State, where the governor there, Siminalayi Fubara, has relieved all commissioners and other public officers affected by the recent Supreme Court judgment of their appointment with immediate effect. The action follows the Supreme Court's recognition of the Martin Amehule as the lawful Speaker of the Rivers State House of Assembly, a decision that legally nullified the actions taken by Victor Okojombo, who presided as Speaker and screened the majority of the commissioners that served in the last 2 years. In a statement issued by the Chief Press Secretary to the Governor, Nelson Chukwudi, shortly after a private valedictory session with the Cabinet of the Government House to mark Nigeria's 65th independence anniversary, the Governor, Fubara, thanked members of his cabinet for their services and contributions to the growth and development of Rivers State over the past 2 years. With this development, less than 10 commissioners are expected to be retained pending the recognition of the cabinet. Well, interesting days ahead in Rivers State. We'll get to see how the governor again would have to represent these candidates, or perhaps more names now this time, to the State House of Assembly. Let's get to talk other issues now away from Rivers State, where the 2023 presidential candidates of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, says the All Progressives Congress-led government of the past decade has destroyed what was once a promising nation at independence that was poised to not only be the giant of Africa, but a world powerhouse. At a State of the Nation address in Abuja, Mr. Obi says the policies of the current administration have plunged over 15 million Nigerians below the poverty line in its first year alone, and it is still pursuing a brutal tax regime demanding its citizens pay more to the government despite benefiting little or nothing in return. He carpets the government for what he calls, quote, reckless borrowing that has further impoverished the nation, with its leaders feasting, adding that Nigerians are increasingly unsafe across the nation due to what he's also describing as an apparent lack of leadership and direction.
This government borrows recklessly, not for investment in productive infrastructure, but for wasteful consumption. Insecurity has further crippled our economy. Nigerians now live in fear of traveling by road. Kidnapping has become rampant, with billions paid as ransom. Incompetence in security management has turned our country into one of the most terrorized and unsafe nations in the world. Cronyism, corruption, and disregard for rule of law have scared away investors, while other African countries have overtaken us as preferred investment destinations. Despite this mismanagement, Nigeria's potential for greatness remains. We cannot give up on the dream of a prosperous and secure nation What we need now is competent, compassionate, and committed leadership. Our primary priority must be prudent economic management, investment in human capital, rule of law, and infrastructure development.
Well, if you're listening to the 2023 presidential candidates of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter will be reflecting there on Nigeria 65 and, of course, the state of the nation. Let's bring you other stories now. The leadership of Pengassan has announced the suspension of the nationwide strike, notwithstanding its dissatisfaction with resolutions reached after the meeting with the National Security Advisor. President of the association, Mr. Festus Osifo, announced the suspension at a news conference in the nation's capital, Abuja. According to him, although there are gray areas in the resolutions, the association took the decision to suspend the industrial action in good faith. He's also warning that the body will resume the strike without any notice should the management of the Dangote refinery renege on the agreement reached.
Yes, today we know or we believe or we suspect that some of the things that the government has asked Dangote to do, that he's going to sleep in it because he did it to Nupeng. We have our suspicion. We truly don't believe that he will keep to his own side of the bargain. We truly don't believe that he will live up to expectation. We don't believe. But because we have respect for institutions, because we have respect for government, because we have respect for processes and we have respect for procedures, and because for those in government who sat up till almost 4 a.m. this morning to try and resolve this subject, the NEC has decided to listen to them. Even with the shortcomings in the document, the NEC of Pengassan has decided that we will go ahead to suspend the industrial action that we started on Sunday, 28th day of September 2025. Any part of this agreement or any part of this communique as put up by the Ministry of Labour that is broken, we will not give any notice. We will not give any warning. We will resume the suspended industrial action immediately.
Well, that's the president of Pengassan there, Mr. Festus Osifo, calling off the nationwide strike. But very strong words indeed. There are gray areas in the agreement reached with the Dangote refinery, but yet they had to call off the strike. So it will be interesting to see how this will play out this time. Remember that Dangote, of course, have had some sort of agreements with Nupeng, and then there was Dapman, and now Pengassan. But then again, some persons have had to push back and say, you know what, Pengassan, there's some sort of allegations of corruption happening there, and looking at the interests. Is it for your personal interests or for the interests of the larger population of Nigeria? 800 workers were sacked or relieved of their duties at the refinery. But then again, the decision to shut down the nation and facilities and key infrastructure was also questioned by many sectors of the country. And some would also say, you know, this is the battle that perhaps Pengassan cannot win. So we'll watch and see what will play out in the coming days between the leadership of Pengassan after announcing the suspension of the strike and what will play out, of course, with the 800 workers and the agreements reached with Dangote refinery. Let's get to tell you other stories now. Vice President Kashim Shettima, we understand, has returned to the nation's capital, Abuja, after a diplomatic mission representing President Bola Tinubu at the 80th United Nations General Assembly in New York, followed by strategic engagements in Germany. There you see the videos of the vice president arriving in the nation's capital, Abuja. Well, during the week-long international tour, the VP delivered Nigeria's national statements advocating for comprehensive UN reforms, promoting Africa's sovereignty over $700 billion in mineral resources, and reinforcing strategic partnerships with the UK, Gates Foundation, and other global stakeholders. The Vice President also met with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, earning commendation for Nigeria's bid for a permanent Security Council seat, while showcasing the nation's $200 billion energy transition opportunity to global investors and assuring the diaspora of continued engagement in President Bola Tinubu's policies. All right, let's bring you more stories now, as we can tell you that in Plateau State, the Economic Community of West African States has donated 26 million naira in educational support to children affected by the conflict in that state. The Director of Humanitarian and Social Affairs at ECOWAS, Dr. Sintiki Tarfa, announced the donation during the launch of the Humanitarian Development Peace Dialogue in Jos, the Plateau State capital. She also announced the donation of 56 million naira for farmers' recovery in the states. Our correspondent in Plateau States, Percy Dabang, reports.
Plateau State has endured waves of deadly attacks, forcing more than 31,000 households to flee their homes. Farmlands have been destroyed and children forced out of school, creating a humanitarian crisis that continues to strain host communities.
Please, let's appreciate that.
It is against this backdrop that the Plateau State Peace-Building Agency convened the Humanitarian Development and Peace Nexus Workshop in Jos, the state capital. The meeting is organized through a collaboration between the ECOWAS Commission, the German Development Agency, and the European Union Support Program for African Peace and Security. It afforded participants the opportunity to assess the humanitarian situation in Plateau, and ECOWAS is leading the way in providing some succor for those affected by violent conflicts in the state.
Our humanitarian assistance to children affected by conflict in Jos is a powerful gesture of solidarity and compassion. We are demonstrating our solidarity by providing educational assistance of 26 million to children affected by conflict. We are adding to the work that you are excellently doing work here in Plateau State, providing assistance of 56 million for food and non-food items, for essential household items to families to rebuild their life.
The federal government, through the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, described the intervention as timely, noting its impact on thousands of vulnerable families.
Let us remember that women and children are not merely victims of conflict. They are resilient agents of conflict who deserve protection, education, and the chance to thrive and contribute meaningfully for their community.
According to the Plateau State Peace-Building Agency, in May 2025, 31,729 households have been displaced across Burkinladi, Bassa, Bokos, Mangu, and Riom local government areas of the state. The state government plans to use the donation to provide food, school supplies, and other basic needs for children living in displacement camps in affected areas.
People who are affected by conflict and by violence have been in some of these situations for a while, and so they need help, with their resilience and recovery. A number of them have been doing well on their own, but they also need that boost, to help them come out on a sustainable basis.
Since this conflict occurred, we have children in the camp, no school. Children are playing, only eating food in the camp. But with this, that I saw the support. Since the government of Plateau is here, I know this support will reach these IDP students in their various camps.
The state government is pledging to implement the recommendations of the Fact-Finding Committee on Just Crisis as part of efforts to hold decades of attacks that have claimed lives in rural communities across the state. Percy Dabang, Channels Television News.
We're watching Lunchtime Politics. We're due for a break. When we come back, we'll cross over to the nation's capital and get some perspective as regards concerning the nation's national broadcast by Mr. President yesterday. Plus, we have news just in for you. In just a moment, please stay with us. Welcome back to the second part of the program. We have breaking news for you concerning Rivers State. Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court in Abuja has dismissed a suit instituted against President Bola Tinubu challenging the proclamation of a state of emergency in Rivers State, delivering judgment in a suit filed by Belema Briggs and 4 others against the emergency rule. Justice Omotosho held that the 5 plaintiffs lacked the legal stand to institute the case. The judge said that such case as constituted can only be determined by the Supreme Court only. Justice Omotosho held that none of the plaintiffs claimed to be members of a state executive committee or members of a state house of assembly or suffered any injury greater than the rest of the people of Rivers State. The court further held that none of the plaintiffs claimed to have the fiat of the Attorney General of the state to initiate the case. Besides, Justice Omotosho said that the claim of President Tinubu that he imposed a state of emergency to avoid looming breakdown of law and order was not challenged or disputed by the plaintiffs. Justice Omotosho held that the claim of breach of fundamental rights by the plaintiffs by Tinubu cannot stand because of the appropriate law on emergency rule order was invoked by the president. And the judge now held that the case was frivolous and baseless because the mandates of other people of Rivers State was not obtained before instituting it on their behalf. All right, so that's our breaking story this hour. The Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court in Abuja dismissing a suit instituted against President Bola Tinubu challenging the proclamation of a state of emergency in Rivers State. Well, more stories for you this hour. The leadership of the Senior Staff Association of Nigeria Universities has raised concerns over what it describes as the continuous refusal of the federal government to renegotiate the 2009 agreement with its members. Addressing journalists of the resolution of SANU's 52nd National Executive Committee meeting, which held in Owerri. The president of SANU is appealing to the government to address all pending issues with the association before the expiration of the 2 weeks extension of the ultimatum, which ends in about 10 days or less.
NEC in session expresses deep disappointment over the continued silence and inaction of the federal government's renegotiation committee regarding the 2009 federal government SANU agreement. NEC strongly calls on the government to honor the 2 weeks extension given to it by the Joint Action Committee of NASU and SANU in order to avert the impending industrial crisis in the university system. So the 2 weeks we have given will elapse by the 6th of October. And we hope and pray that we do not have to go to the trenches once again. NEC in session strongly condemns the continued withholding of salaries of SANU members who participated in the 2022 industrial action. NEC therefore urges the federal government to immediately release the outstanding 2 months withheld salaries as a demonstration of good faith and commitment to restoring industrial harmony within the university system.
All right, so let's take the final few minutes of the program and just get to reflect on Mr. President's Independence Day speech yesterday with close attention or reference to issues around insecurity. And perhaps we'll begin with the fact that Mr. President actually recognized the sacrifices of security agencies. In his exact words, he had to, let me quote him, he says, they are working tirelessly and making significant sacrifices to keep Nigerians safe. But take a listen to Mr. President yesterday.
On security, we are working diligently to enhance national security, ensuring our economic experiences improved growth and performance. The officers and men of our armed forces and other security agencies are working tirelessly and making significant sacrifices to keep us safe. They are winning the war against terrorism, banditry, and other violent crimes. We see their victories in their blood and sweat to stamp out Boko Haram terror in the northeast, IPOB ESN terror in southeast, and banditry and kidnapping. We must continue to celebrate their gallantry and salute their courage on behalf of a grateful nation. Peace has returned to 100 of our liberated communities in the northwest and northeast, and thousands of our people have returned safely to their homes.
All right, so there you go, Mr. President, giving Nigerians updates on the fight against insecurity in the country. He says we have recorded some level of progress in the fight against crime. He says, in fact, as a matter of fact, the president says we're winning the war against terrorism, banditry, and other violent crimes. And I'm sure many Nigerians will not agree with this, especially in Nigeria's northeast region, where there are reports of a resurgence of insurgency in states like Borno states precisely, and I think in Yobe. But in Plateau State as well, where we took a story just a moment ago, there are reports of insecurity as well. I understand that we have a security expert now, Kingsley Uzoma, who joins us live now from our Abuja studios. Kingsley, I'm not sure what part of the president's speech you listened to as just a moment ago, but he says there's some sort of progress. I wonder if you're buying into this rhetoric.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. Good afternoon. Yes, I listened to the speech of the president. I also read with regards to insecurity. Yes, we have made progress for me in the last 1 year. If you look at it from across the geopolitical zone, especially, you will discover that away from banditry, at a point, kidnapping was more of a daily activities along the Okene Gaba, Kaba, Bini Lokoja, Bini Expressway, those moving from the east to the north central Abuja and coming from Lagos is usually a nightmare. Without making noise, in the last 6 months, the security agencies, they've been up to their games in making sure that there is reduced insecurity in that aspect. Even though I'm aware that a lot of kidnapping still go on unreported, but again, it has drastically reduced, and much is also needed to be done on the part of security agencies, especially with regards to the intelligence aspect, which is the core job of the DSS, okay? Because, you know, there is this understanding or view of the populace that maybe DSS is excluded for the protection of the president, and sometimes going after quote and unquote political opponents and what have you, or those who are not happy seem not to be in the good book of the president. But when you go back to issues of terrorism, more in the northeast and the banditry in the northwest, the question is, have we recorded significant improvements in that area? The answer is yes, because we have a chief of defense staff in the person of General Christopher Musa, who understands the terrain. Okay, he's there.
But some will argue with you, Mr. Uzoma. Some will argue with you that there's some sort of resurgence, in activities of terrorists in the northeast region, Borno states precisely, where we understand some communities are now experiencing a retakeover.
Yeah, that's very correct. But the question is, are the security agencies sleeping? The answer is no. Remember, whenever there are maybe hot pursuit, especially shelling from the Air Force, some civil society organization and community persons, they tend to attack the same federal government and the military, accuse them of killing a civilian population. I'm aware of this in some of these areas. the same persons will come back to the drawing board to review how they can maybe engage in this professional art, kinetics acts, to make sure that they reduce civilian casualties, even where there are no civilian casualties, okay? Although there is areas where we have reserved for the security agencies. Like you see pictures and videos flying across the social medias whereby some known or identified bandits or terrorist elements who are on the wanted list of the security agencies, you find them being coming out openly to engage in quote and unquote peace talk and what have you. And at the end of the day, nobody is mopping up these arms from them. That is the aspect we are looking at security agencies to really come out clean on that aspect. These guys, they've been on your wanted list. All of a sudden, peace is brokered and they are there with arms, and you let them go back to their enclaves with these arms. That aspect they really need to work on.
Absolutely. And some will even query how insecurity is tackled in the northeast region and how we see it being tackled in the southeast region. I'm glad the president mentioned issues around IPOB and ESN as well. But it's a fine place to anchor our conversation. We are totally out of time. Mr. Kingsley Uzoma is a security expert. Thank you as always for stopping by our studios. Well, that does it for us here on Lunchtime Politics this hour. Thanks indeed for watching. On behalf of the production team and everyone here, I am Kelly Egiga, and you have been served on Lunchtime Politics. Good afternoon.